They told me stories like this don't happen anymore. That whatever haunted the old cities of England had long been buried beneath stone, beneath time, beneath the weight of disbelief. But some things don't die. They wait. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I saw and what followed me back. If you're listening to this, if you ever find yourself in a place where the air feels too still and the walls seem to breathe leave, don't look for what I found. Don't go into the dark, because once it knows your name, it never forgets. I don't usually take jobs like that anymore. Anything involving old churches tends to come with headaches, asbestos, collapsing ceilings, or priests who think they're art critics. But this one was different. The National Gallery's restoration branch had contacted me directly. They said it was a simple imaging job on a mural discovered beneath St. Bartholomew's Chapel, just outside of Bath. I didn't know then what kind of thing I was walking into. It had rained for days before we arrived. The entire basement was half flooded, and the stench was the first thing that hit us. Thick stale, like mud, mixed with rot. Alec went in first, his flashlight slicing through the dark water. The beam caught stone walls, slick with condensation, and faint carvings that looked older than the church itself. "Are they going to pump this out?" he asked, stepping down the stairs. "Maybe," I said. "They only care about the mural." The water rose up past our boots, dark as coffee. Somewhere above us, I could still hear the faint echo of rain tapping against the chapel roof. Down there, though, everything felt disconnected. Like the air was thicker, slower, carrying the weight of a place that didn't want to be disturbed. We followed the narrow corridor, deeper into the basement. Every step echoed like a whisper that didn't belong to either of us. At one point, Alex swung his light around and asked if the tunnels led to the catacombs. I told him yes, they did. He didn't laugh after that. The deeper we went, the stranger it became. Some of the rooms looked untouched for decades, crates stacked to the ceiling, old furniture draped in sheets yellowed with mold. In one room, a piano sat with its lid open, the keys spotted with black rot. The sight of it made my stomach tighten for reasons I couldn't name. We finally reached a heavy wooden door swollen by water. It took both of us to force it open, and when it gave way, a flood of dark water spilled out around our legs. Alec cursed, but I barely heard him. Inside was a long room. The air shifted colder, heavier. Even our flashlights seemed to dim the moment we stepped through. The far wall had been painted black. At first, I thought it was nothing but tar. Then I saw the texture, the brushstrokes, thousands of them. Up close, it shimmered faint, oily ripples of color that weren't really color at all. It looked like looking into deep water under moonlight, where shadows moved below the surface, but never came into focus. The longer I stared, the deeper it seemed. There was no edge to it, just a depth that went on and on. Alec muttered something under his breath, then went quiet. When I turned, he was swaying on his feet. "Alec," he dropped. I caught him before his head hit the water, but his body went limp, heavy, unresponsive. The panic hit me like a wave. There was nowhere to lay him down that wasn't submerged. My boots slipped on the stone as I tried to drag him back towards the hallway, every muscle in my arms screaming. The water rippled around us, slapping against the walls. Somewhere behind, I thought I heard something else moving. Just a faint disturbance, a shifting sound, like something turning over beneath the surface. I didn't look back. All I could think was to get out. The tunnels twisted in ways I didn't remember. Corners that hadn't been there before, archways that seemed too narrow. My breath echoed louder than my steps, as if the air itself was shrinking. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I was just hearing things. When I finally reached the room with the old furniture, I dragged Alec into a chair, water pouring off both of us. My arms felt like they were full of lead. He was breathing shallow but steady. I leaned over him, calling his name again and again. Alec, come on, wake up. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. That's when I heard it. A note soft off key. A single piano key pressed somewhere behind me. The sound was dull, warped by the damp air, but it was enough to freeze every muscle in my body. I turned slowly towards the doorway, but the only thing staring back was darkness. The piano room, the one we'd passed earlier. I waited, breath held, praying it had been my imagination. Then came another note, lower, closer. That was enough for me. I grabbed Alec under the arms and pulled him upright. He groaned, muttering something incoherent. Together, we stumbled toward the stairs, the water parting around our knees. I didn't look back, not when I felt the air move behind us, not when I thought I heard faint ripples where nothing should have moved. By the time we reached the top, I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. I glanced back one last time. Down at the bottom of the stairs, just beyond the reach of my flashlight, the water was still. But I could have sworn it was higher than before. Alec didn't remember collapsing. When he came to, we were sitting on the floor of the chapel, both of us soaked through. He just kept asking what happened, like he'd fallen asleep standing up. I told him it was probably the air too damp, not enough oxygen. I didn't tell him that I hadn't been able to feel his pulse for a few seconds. He wanted to quit right there, and I almost agreed. But something about that wall, it pulled at me. The texture, the shimmer. It wasn't like any medium I'd ever seen, more like oil over water or light seen through smoke. I told him I'd go back down alone, just to get photos for the report. I don't know if it was pride or curiosity that made me say it. Probably both. The next morning, I went back with better lighting respirators and a portable pump. The rain had stopped, but the basement was still full of ankle-deep water. My boots made hollow splashes that echoed forever. I turned on the generator, and the sound filled the space like a heartbeat. When the light hit that wall again, I froze. Overnight, the surface had changed. The brushstrokes were still there, but the iridescent gleam had shifted position, as if the image had been repainted while we were gone. I could make out faint ridges that seemed to form shapes, almost faces. I took a photo. The instant flash made the room flare white, and in that moment of brightness, I thought I saw movement ripples crossing the black surface like something alive underneath. Then the light faded, and everything was still. I told myself it was a trick of moisture, maybe the paint reacting to humidity. But even thinking that didn't calm me. The air down there felt heavier than before, pressing on my chest. When I turned to leave, I realized the water had risen again. Just an inch, but I hadn't heard it. No dripping, no flow, no sound at all. Yet the level had changed. That's when I saw Alec's reflection behind me. Except Alec was upstairs. I spun around so fast, I slipped and hit the wall. There was no one there. The reflection was gone too. Just me breathing hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. I climbed out as fast as I could. I didn't even shut down the generator. By the time I reached daylight, I was shaking so badly that one of the crewmen from the gallery asked if I'd been electrocuted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that surface again. Black, wet, endless. I kept thinking about the reflection, how it looked taller than me. Its head bent forward, like it was listening. I tried calling Alec the next morning. No answer. His phone went straight to voicemail. I figured he just needed rest. I told myself I'd finish the documentation alone. When I returned 2 days later, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not rot, but something metallic, like rust or blood. The pump had stopped working, and the water was knee-high again. I waded through the tunnel, flashlight trembling in my hand. The generator was silent, but its light still glowed faintly from somewhere ahead, flickering as if through moving water. The mural room was exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing: Alec's helmet was floating near the doorway. My throat went dry. I picked it up. It was slick, slimy somehow, and I almost dropped it when I saw the handprint on the side. A single black smear dried into the surface. Not paint, something thicker. I don't remember leaving, just the sound of my own boots hitting the stone as I climbed, and the way the air felt colder with every step. That night, I got a message from Alec. Just one sentence: "It's not dry down here." I called him again. No answer. The message timestamp said 3:12 a.m. I tried to laugh it off, but the words kept circling in my head. Down here, not there. Like he was still in the basement. The next day, I went to his flat. No one answered the door. The curtains were closed, and the hallway outside smelled faintly of mildew. When I pressed my ear against the wood, I heard dripping. Slow, steady, like water falling onto stone. I should have called the police then, but I didn't. I told myself it was a leaky pipe, that he'd gone out, that I was imagining things. But as I stood there, I realized something else. The dripping wasn't coming from behind the door. It was coming from inside the wall. And when I finally stepped back, there were wet footprints leading away from the threshold. Not mine. Chapter 3. The piano room. I didn't go back to the church for almost a week. I told myself I was done with the whole thing, that Alec would turn up eventually, and that none of it was my problem anymore. But it stayed with me, the smell of damp stone, the silence after that last message, and the way the air in my flat felt heavier, like it had carried something back with me. Every night I heard water, not outside, inside, somewhere just beneath the floorboards, slow and patient. By the 6th day, I couldn't stand it. I told myself I was going back to check on the equipment. That's all. Professional responsibility. That lie was enough to get me into the car. When I reached St. Bartholomew's, the front doors were unlocked. The place felt abandoned, colder than before. My footsteps echoed in the nave, like I was the first person to walk there in 100 years. At the top of the basement stairs, I hesitated. The light switch didn't work. I could see only the faint shimmer of water below, reflecting what little daylight seeped through the cracks above. The moment I stepped down, that smell hit me again, wrought oil and metal. The air was thick enough to taste. My boots broke the surface of the water with soft, reluctant splashes. Each sound went on far too long, as if the room were much larger than it should have been. The generator was still there, half submerged its cord, trailing into the dark. I didn't bother trying to start it. The silence was total heavy enough that I could hear my own pulse. And then from somewhere ahead, a sound. One single piano note. It was faint and warped, like it came through water, but it was unmistakable. The same piano from before. I turned my flashlight toward the sound. The beam cut across the tunnel, catching dust and mist, but nothing else. Just an open doorway at the end of the hall. The piano room. I told myself I'd just look one glance and leave. But when I reached the doorway, I froze. The piano lid was closed now. I remembered leaving it open. The air around it shimmered faintly, like heat rising from asphalt, though it was freezing cold. I circled closer. Each step made the wood beneath the water creak. A faint ripple spread out from the piano's legs, and I saw movement in the reflection, just the faintest hint of a shape shifting beneath the surface. Then another note played. Not from the keys this time, from beneath them. Something inside the piano pressed upward just enough to make the lid tremble. I backed away slowly, one step at a time, but the ripples followed me. The water began to move against the current toward me, as though something large was stirring below. When I turned, I saw the corridor stretching back, longer than before, the end lost in blackness. The mural room should have been visible, but it wasn't. It felt like the building had rearranged itself. I started walking faster. My light caught glimpses of walls, slick with moss carvings, that hadn't been there before, strange spirals and shapes that looked almost like human figures, twisted and kneeling. Then I heard footsteps behind me, soft at first, then closer. I spun the flashlight back toward the piano room, but the doorway was empty. Only the rippling water moved. Still the steps kept coming wet, deliberate, out of sync with my own. I broke into a run. The tunnel seemed to narrow around me, the ceiling lowering. Water splashed up my legs as I stumbled through, nearly losing my footing more than once. Every step I took, the footsteps took one more. By the time I reached the stairs, I was shaking too hard to hold the flashlight steady. I climbed 2 steps at a time, my heart slamming against my ribs. And then I heard the piano again. One long, distorted chord, impossibly loud, like it was being played underwater. It shook the whole basement. I burst into the main chapel, gasping, and slammed the trapdoor shut behind me. For a long time, I just sat there drenched and shaking, listening. The sound had stopped. No footsteps, no piano, nothing. When I finally looked up, I realized the sunlight coming through the broken roof had dimmed clouds covering the sky. And on the edge of one of those beams of light, across the old wooden floor, was a trail of wet footprints. They weren't mine. They led away from the trapdoor and toward the front of the church. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after what happened in the piano room. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear that single note again, the one that came from somewhere beneath the keys. I'd wake up to the sound of dripping water and think I was still down there. The museum wanted progress, though. They didn't care about my nerves. So they sent someone to help Marie, a specialist in imaging and restoration. She was cheerful too, cheerful for a place like that. She joked about ghost stories while we hauled our equipment through the nave and down into the basement. I wanted to warn her, to tell her about Alec, about the sounds, about the things I thought I saw. But how do you say that without sounding insane? The pumps were still running, though the water never dropped below ankle height. It was like the floor itself was sweating. Marie unpacked the tripod and camera while I checked the lighting. When we finally switched the lamps on, the mural shimmered like oil on skin. Marie's smile faded immediately. "That's unsettling," she said. "You should have seen it the first night," I told her. She lined up her first shot, adjusted the lens, and triggered the flash. The entire room flared white, and for that single second, I saw movement inside the wall, like a shadow sinking deeper. Marie checked the photo on her display, her brow furrowed. It looks different. The colors, they shift, like it's not flat. She took another photo from a new angle, another flash, same thing. Each image looked like a different painting, swirls of color, faint outlines that didn't exist on the surface itself. I leaned over her shoulder. The shapes reminded me of waves of something vast, moving underwater. "Let's just finish," I said. "Sure," she replied quietly. "But it's almost like it reacts to the light." We moved on to the next section. I kept glancing at the mural, half expecting it to change again. The reflections from the water made it seem to breathe, expanding and contracting with every flicker of our lamps. We'd nearly finished setting up when I noticed something strange. The air around the mural rippled, like heat distortion. The water at our feet vibrated with it. "Do you feel that?" I asked. "It's just pressure from the pumps," Marie said, but she didn't sound sure. She adjusted the camera for the last set of shots and hit the timer. We both stepped back as the flash went off one final time. White light, then darkness. When my eyes adjusted, she was gone. The tripod was there, the camera was there, but Marie wasn't. At first I thought she'd stepped outside. I called her name, my voice bouncing off the stone walls. Nothing. I looked behind the sandbags at the door. No ripples, no footsteps, no sound. Just the faint hum of the equipment. Then I noticed her flashlight. It was lying on the floor, still on, pointing directly at the mural. The wall was wet. I approached slowly, every instinct in me screaming to run. The texture was moving, not dripping, not flaking, shifting as though the brushstrokes were twisting beneath the surface. And there, for just a heartbeat, I saw something. A face, pressed against the black from the inside. Eyes open, mouth wide, and I swear it was Marie. The face slid downward, melting into darkness, and the wall rippled once before going still. I stumbled backward, tripping over the tripod. My knees hit the water, and the sound broke the silence like a gunshot. Then behind me, something beeped. The camera timer. It was signaling the end of the exposure cycle. The flash went off again, and for that single burst of light, I saw her standing right behind me, soaked, shaking eyes wide as if she'd just surfaced from deep water. "Marie," I shouted, grabbing her arms. She was freezing cold. Her skin looked pale, almost translucent, and her hair hung in strings like it was full of oil. She blinked slowly, lips trembling. "It's so dark," she whispered. I couldn't breathe. I tried to ask her what happened, but she collapsed against me, half conscious. I dragged her toward the stairs, water sloshing around us. When we reached the upper hall, she came to for a moment, coughing hard, gripping my wrist like her life depended on it. "Don't go back down there," she rasped. Then she passed out again. I got her into the car and drove straight to the hospital. They said it was hypothermia and carbon monoxide poisoning, though none of that explained how she vanished or how the wall had moved. I didn't argue. I just wanted to leave. But before they wheeled her away, she grabbed my sleeve with trembling fingers. Her voice was a whisper so faint, I almost missed it. "It's not a wall," she said. "It's an opening." And then her eyes rolled back, and she was gone again. Marie stayed in the hospital for 3 days. The doctors said it was mild hypoxia, lack of oxygen, probably from the damp air or old pipes. They said she'd be fine, but I knew they were wrong. The look on her face when she woke up, it wasn't confusion. It was memory. She wouldn't talk to me after that. Every time I visited, she turned away muttering the same words under her breath. It's still open. It never closed. I stopped trying after the fourth visit. I couldn't bear that empty stare anymore. A week later, I got a call from the church council. They told me the restoration was being halted. Safety concerns, they said. Too much water, too much mold. But I could hear something else in their tone, fear maybe. They wanted the whole project forgotten. Still, I needed answers. I spent a few nights digging through archives online. That's when I found a name, George Helwell, a painter from the 1970s, who'd been arrested for vandalizing the same chapel. They'd accused him of defacing sacred property. But when I found photos of his work, I felt the blood drain from my face. Every one of his paintings looked like that mural. The same endless black, the same hidden shimmer, the same brushstroke texture that made you think there was something moving behind it. I traced an auction record to a private collector living in London. He'd bought several of Helwell's paintings after the artist's death. So I called him, pretending to be a researcher from the gallery. He invited me over the next day. His flat was immaculate red velvet wallpaper, heavy curtains, antique furniture, polished to a mirror shine. The kind of place where even silence felt expensive. The man himself looked like he'd stepped out of another century. White hair combed straight back, gold-rimmed glasses, eyes that never stopped watching. He smiled when I mentioned the mural. "So you've seen it," he said, voice trembling with excitement. "Few living people have." "I didn't know it was famous," I said. "Oh, not famous," he corrected. "Forgotten. Deliberately." He gestured for me to sit. The cushions hissed under my weight. He poured tea without looking away from me. George Helwell didn't paint that mural, he said. Finally, he found it. Beneath layers of plaster, behind crates of old debris. He tried to paint over it, but that only made things worse. Worse how he couldn't unsee it. Once he'd exposed the surface, it changed him. He started painting it everywhere. Walls, canvases, even his own house. The priests called it vandalism. He said he was trying to contain it. He chuckled softly, a sound that made my stomach turn. Contain it. As if such a thing could be contained. He stood and walked to the far wall, where a curtain hung across a frame. When he pulled it aside, I felt the air in the room shift. 7 paintings stared back at me. Each one showed a human figure, twisted, drowning, screaming into an ocean of black. The paint was thick, like it had been poured, and the texture almost looked wet. But 2 of the figures, 2 faces I recognized, Alec and Marie. Their likenesses were perfect, every line, every expression. Marie's mouth open in silent terror. Alec's eyes wide and vacant, his hand reaching upward as if caught mid-scream. "He painted these decades ago," I whispered. "Yes," the collector said. 16 years before he died. Fascinating, isn't it? How did he... He didn't see them. The man interrupted. He remembered them. Or perhaps he was told. The thing behind that wall doesn't see time the way we do. It devours moments out of order. He leaned close to me, the smell of dust and old paper heavy on his breath. "You've been near it, haven't you?" I couldn't answer. He smiled wider. "Then it already knows you. You'll start dreaming soon of water, of cold, of silence. It will ask you to come back." I stood up, heart hammering. "You're insane." Maybe he said, still smiling. "But you'll see I'm right. You can't paint over darkness. You can only give it a new face." I left without another word. Outside, the air felt thin. My hands were trembling so badly that I could barely unlock the car. The city lights looked strange, hazy, shimmering, like the mural's reflection on water. As I started the engine, I caught sight of my rearview mirror. In the back seat, for just a moment, I thought I saw Alec's reflection, wet, pale, staring straight at me. When I turned around, the seat was empty, but the mirror stayed fogged, as if someone had just breathed on it from the inside. And in the condensation, a single word was written below. I tried to ignore the mirror. I wiped the word away before it dried, told myself it was just nerves, that maybe the collector had followed me, that it was something rational. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, I didn't dream of cities or people or even light. I dreamt of water, endless, heavy black water pressing in from all sides. When I woke, my sheets were damp with sweat, and there was mud on the floor beneath the window. I knew where I had to go. The chapel looked even older than I remembered. The air around it seemed heavier, thicker, like it had been waiting for me. I thought about calling the authorities, but what would I tell them? That the wall was alive, that people were disappearing into paint. So I went alone. Inside, everything smelled of rot and iron. The pews were warped with damp, and the light through the broken roof painted the air in sickly gold. The trapdoor to the basement was still there, though the padlock had been broken clean off. I stood over it listening. Water. Always the water. I climbed down. The tunnels were worse this time. The air felt tight and old, like something breathing slowly. My flashlight cut through the darkness, catching flashes of carvings on the walls that I hadn't seen before, spiral screwed figures with open mouths. At the first turn, I saw a faint glow in the distance. My heart jumped. Alec, I called. Silence. Then a whisper that wasn't an echo. It's dark in here. The voice came from ahead. I moved faster. The glow turned out to be a lamp, my old work light still burning somehow. Its beam flickered against the waterlogged floor, against shapes I didn't want to name. And then I saw him. Alec. He was standing knee-deep in the water, facing the mural room, his back to me. His skin looked grey thin, like parchment stretched over bone. He didn't turn when I called his name. When I got closer, I saw that he was muttering to himself, the same phrase over and over. It's so dark. It's so dark. I touched his shoulder. He turned. His eyes were sunken milky. His lips trembled, splitting as he spoke. He says it's your turn now. Then he smiled. The skin around his mouth tore when he did. I stumbled back, tripping into the water. He didn't follow. He just turned away, wading toward the mural room. The air grew colder the closer I came. The tunnel seemed to pulse a slow rhythm that matched my heartbeat. When I reached the doorway, the first thing I saw was the wall. It was no longer black. It was open. A vast, churning void stretched where the wall had been. The brushstrokes had liquefied into moving water swirling like an ocean in a storm. And in that shifting darkness, I saw faces, hundreds, thousands, all screaming silently, their bodies writhing just beneath the surface. Alex stepped into it without hesitation. His body sank with barely a ripple. I ran forward and caught his arm, but his skin was slick soft. It peeled under my grip. He didn't resist. He just looked at me and whispered, "You'll see it too." Then he was gone. I was left alone, staring at the surface as it calmed smooth as glass. My reflection stared back, pale shaking, surrounded by nothing but black. And then, the surface moved. My reflection smiled. I don't remember climbing out. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car outside my flat, with the headlights still on water dripping from my sleeves onto the steering wheel. It was dawn. When I looked in the mirror again, my own eyes looked different, darker, the irises almost black. And on the back seat, something lay across the upholstery. A wet canvas. It wasn't mine. When I unrolled it, I saw what it showed: the church basement, the mural, and me standing at the edge, reaching out toward the water. The brushstrokes were thick and oily, still wet to the touch. And when I blinked, the image changed. My hand, the painted one, was now reaching into the wall. That night, I tried to burn it. I poured lighter fluid over the canvas and struck a match. The flame took quickly, but instead of smoke, a thick black vapor poured out, cold and damp, smelling of earth and decay. The fire died within seconds. The painting was untouched. Now it hangs in my hallway, no matter how many times I threw it out. Every morning, it's there again, glistening as if freshly painted. Sometimes when I pass it, I hear water behind the walls. Sometimes I hear Alec whispering, "It's your turn in the dark." It's been months since I last went near that chapel. I tell myself, I won't think about it anymore, that Alec and Marie are gone, that the thing down there took what it wanted. But it's still with me. I can feel it every night when the house goes quiet, when the pipes settle, and the faint sound of dripping starts again somewhere behind the walls. They said Marie was transferred to a long-term care facility. The doctors told me she hasn't spoken a word since she was admitted. Alec's parents stopped returning my calls after the second week. I can't blame them. When they showed me photos from the hospital, when I saw what was left of him, I wished I hadn't asked. He's thinner now, his skin pale and grey like wet clay. They keep him sedated most of the time. But sometimes they say he wakes up, and every time he does, he says the same thing. It's your turn in the dark. I quit my job after that. I couldn't walk into another building without smelling mildew and hearing the echo of water. I took whatever work I could find, construction, retail, night shifts. Anything that kept my hands busy and my mind away from what happened. For a while, it almost worked. Until the dreams started again. In the dream, I'm back in the basement, standing ankle deep in water. The air is heavy breathing against me. The mural isn't on the wall anymore. It is the wall, spreading through every tunnel like veins. Sometimes, I see Marie walking ahead of me, her footsteps rippling across the surface, a reflection following in perfect silence. Other nights, it's Alec. He never looks back. He just keeps walking until he reaches the far end of the corridor and steps into the black. I always wake up before I see what happens next. But lately, the dreams are changing. Now I don't wake up right away. I feel the cold water creeping higher, my knees, my chest, my throat, and I can hear something fast moving beneath the surface, like the ocean breathing, like the sound of paint being brushed over canvas. When I finally wake, my hands are wet. I've tried everything to stop it. I threw out the canvas, smashed it, even buried it miles from the city. But it keeps coming back, leaning against the hallway wall, still dripping, the brushstrokes shifting when the light hits them. A few nights ago, I woke up to find the canvas lying flat on the floor. A puddle had spread around it, slick and black, reflecting the ceiling. When I leaned closer, I saw movement in the reflection. Not mine, but someone else's. Marie, maybe. Or Alec. They were smiling. I locked myself in the bathroom and stayed there until sunrise. When I came out, the floor was dry, the canvas gone, but I could hear the faint sound of water beneath the tiles, slow and steady waiting. I think it's calling me back. Sometimes I catch myself staring at drain puddles, even the sheen of oil on the street after rain. Every surface looks like it's waiting to open. And this morning, when I woke, there was paint on my hands, thick, black, still wet. I followed the marks across my room, over the doorframe, down the hall. They led to my living room wall, and there, spread across the plaster, in broad, glistening strokes, was the beginning of something new. A shape, a horizon, a faint shimmer that moves when I breathe. I don't remember painting it, but I can feel the pull, that same pressure in my chest, that same whisper behind my thoughts. Maybe Alec was right. Maybe there's no escaping it. It just waits for each of us to take our turn. If you ever find yourself standing in front of a wall painted black, and the air feels heavy, and the water on the floor ripples, though nothing's moved, don't stare too long. Don't listen to the sound beneath it, because once it notices you, it will never stop waiting. And when the time comes, it will be your turn in the dark. I've tried to live with it. I've tried to forget the sound of dripping water, the smell of cold stone, the way the darkness pressed in like a living thing. But every night, I wake to find my hands wet, and the paint on my walls still fresh. I think it's waiting for me to finish what I started. If you hear a knock from inside the wall, don't answer. If you see your reflection smile before you do, don't look again. And if one night you wake to find a black shape spreading across your wall, turn away. Don't touch it. Don't listen. Because when it calls your name, it will already be too late.